Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the second part of the show. I was going to do a little the intro song that I was doing. I quite liked it. It's from How Bizarre, because how bizarre, right? This whole thing to live through is very very bizarre, but not yet. So we're not there quite yet, but that's all right. Oh, I've got to fix something here. We'll get me like that and then like that. All right, there we go. All right, so getting into the third wave. Neil Clark is responding to Lockdown Lazarus, and he says, no sooner does FIFO reveal that the vax isn't the way out than Trudeau and the BBC are saying the same. Other measures will be needed. Marvelous that we've been in training for the behavioral interventions for months. The coordination is the scariest part. Boiled frogs. See the first part of the show. But he says, the global coordination, my wife listens to Hungarian radio online. Politicians there are parroting exactly the same lines and phrases as the ones in the UK and across NATO land. Left or right, conservative or socialist, they're all reading from the same Great Reset script. Yeah. Here's Boris, and Boris is telling us Boris is very, very jerky with his motions. It's quite funny. And he's saying here basically that the vaccine, while everybody should get the vaccine, isn't actually going to work. Isn't going to work. So I think funny is the wrong word, because that's not funny, but I think that it's interesting that everybody is saying across all of the NATO land, as the other tweet said, exactly the same thing. And now the wisdom is that it's not going to work. Okay, here we go. Like, vaccines aren't going to work. They're not the way out of this. We have to keep up with the NPIs. Even the WHO is saying vaccines are one tool. We have to keep up with the NPIs. I'll show you that in a minute. Here we go.
But it is very, very important for everybody to understand that the reduction in these numbers, in hospitalizations and in deaths and in infections, has not been achieved by the vaccination program. People don't, I think, appreciate that it's the lockdown that has been overwhelmingly important in delivering this improvement in the pandemic and in the figures that we're seeing. And so, yes, of course, the vaccination program has helped, but the bulk of the work in reducing the disease has been done by the lockdown.
So you see, all we have to do is completely remove your civil liberties, and then our healthcare system, which you, by the way, pay for, won't be overwhelmed. So all you have to do is stay in your homes forever, and problem solved. Right? Oh, wait, no, that's not what we want to do. That's not what we want to do. That's not a realistic way out of this, right? Stay locked in your homes forever. Here's Justin Trudeau. So Justin Trudeau warning. Millhouse Van Houten says, if we're led to believe that the vaccines won't end this nightmare, then I really don't see the point of getting one. Either they work or they don't. Continuing restrictions sends a signal that they do not work. And here is Justin Trudeau saying, first, that the UK, even though they're well ahead of us on vaccines, they're still very locked down. So don't expect to be not locked down when the vaccines roll out. And third wave, fourth wave, whatever rhetoric you want to have, but that's what they're talking about here. So here we go.
I think it's really important that we work from facts and understanding of the science around things. We know, for example, that the UK is ahead of just about everybody else on vaccinations, and yet they maintain very strong restrictions and are facing a very serious third wave. Vaccinations on their own are not enough to keep us safe. We need to engage in the right kinds of behaviors, do things that the Conservatives aren't always good at, like wearing masks, keeping distances, and obeying public health rules.
You hear that? It's Conservatives that aren't good at keeping distance, wearing masks, and obeying public health rules. This is labeling the other and peeling off the other using politics. This is divisive politics. 101, divisive politics, right? It's those conservative people who are keeping us locked down. But don't you forget that even the UK, who's well ahead of us, they're locked down, right? Those conservatives are to blame, though. Scary. It's a scary thing, guys. It's a scary, scary situation, because this is pure politics. Science has no bearing here. This is the Church of COVID and pure politics. Okay, unbelievable. Okay, next tab. Let's get to it. Here's the WHO. Make no mistake, COVID-19 vaccines are a vital and powerful tool, but they are not the only tool, says the WHO on their Twitter yesterday, or on the 12th. We say this day after day, week after week, and we keep saying it. Physical distancing works. Works to do what? Masks work. You have to qualify that. What does works mean exactly? Masks have been mandatory for a year and the cases have exploded and they haven't really gone away. And Toronto's been on lockdown since October. Masks work how exactly? What do you mean by that? Because that's not a statement that is self-evident, okay? Hand hygiene works. Same statement. Ventilation works. There's no ventilation works. Yes, unless you mean the mask, in which case screw ventilation and mask yourself and suffocate yourself, right? Like ventilation works, right? Except unless you're talking inches from your face, in which case rebreathe your oxygen, your O2, your CO2. Surveillance, testing, contact tracing, isolation, supportive quarantine, compassionate care, they all work to stop COVID-19 infections and save lives, Dr. Tedros. This is just, again, politics playing medicine. It is no basis in reality. Works. No physician would put this out there. Works. Qualify that. My goodness. Justin Trudeau's asked, is there anything you would change about the vaccine procurement? Or do you think that was like anything that you thought was a mistake? No. I think we did everything great. This is Justin Trudeau giving himself a grade on the vaccine rollout. Here we go.
Anything about our vaccine procurement
That's probably loud. I'm going to turn that down just a little bit because it seems loud to me. Hold on.
approach as a country that you, in retrospect, now think was a mistake, or where you would have liked to have acted earlier?
No, not in terms of our vaccine rollout. Obviously, we worked extremely hard from last summer onwards to sign many different contracts with different potential vaccine makers around the world. And we were among the first countries to start getting approved vaccines into arms back in December. We've seen various vaccine companies challenged with development or manufacturing issues, but in
So the vaccine has changed from trying to get us back to normal to like a sports-like stat, right? Like, oh, we've got all these vaccines in arms, and he wouldn't change anything because he made lots of deals, but he made bad deals. He made the deal with CanSino, which was with a Chinese company that they just reneged on. They took our money and reneged on. They made deals with country or companies that were outside of Canada, but ignored companies that were inside of Canada that were providing therapeutics that they thought would work, and vaccines that were homemade. They had a Montreal plant that was set up to take the CanSino approval, and the Alberta company that wanted to build the vaccine, their own homegrown vaccines, wanted to just take over the plant and use it for their own vaccine. They thought the Canadian government will love this. I don't think they've done some press here and there, but the Canadian government has certainly not been excited about it. They're not interested in it, right? And so, like, how do you address those shortcomings, right? And Trudeau doesn't see that. He doesn't care. He's like, oh yeah, we did a good job. We worked real hard. But you know what? Like, working really hard at something and having success at something are not always the same thing. If you're incompetent at something and you work really hard at it, you might put out something that like a kindergartner would put out. And somebody who's competent would look at it and go, that's a really good try, Miss Freeland. Try again. Right? The budget, good one, good shot, but go do it again. Yeah, we'll put this out in a month or two, guys. Give it another go. Right? Or something to that effect, just as an example. Just pulling one out of the air, right? Like, it's like playing Mario Kart with your little brother, right? And then, or like a video game with a younger, like, niece or nephew, and then not totally destroying them until the second game. Okay, moving back into the tabs. Sorry, I'm diatribing too much. Tucker Carlson slammed Trudeau over brutal COVID-19 messaging. Tucker Carlson basically says, like, either the vaccine works or it doesn't work, like, and then he does his usual Tucker face, that face right there. So, you know, it's Tucker Carlson taking Canada and Trudeau to the Fox News woodshed a little bit, but people who aren't paying attention don't understand the truth in what Tucker is saying on his show, right? Like, either the vaccine works and we should do it, or the vaccine doesn't work and it's useless and we should probably just go back to normal. Yeah. Yep. I figured this out. The other day I was at my brother's house and he said, oh, have you seen there's a COVID hotspot neighborhood near or defined in Guelph? And he said, near me. He's like, it's over there. I was like, it's over. I was like, do you know which house it starts at? He's like, no, I don't care. I'm like, all right. But the funny part is, they're using this to drive drive demand. They're using this to drum up fear to get people to want to take the vaccine, because I guess they're not having enough. They've opened up vaccine registration to anybody 16 years old and older in my health unit. So fine, yay, whatever. If you want to have a vaccine, go get it or whatever. I would strongly encourage you to, Google the adverse events, but whatever. We'll talk about them in just a minute. But if you want to, do what you want to do, right? You're a human. You can do whatever you want. But this is, in my opinion, part of the campaign to increase people's willingness or whatever to take it, and how fear sells, right? The CNN guy yesterday from the Project Veritas leak, right? Fear sells, baby, right? You got to mainline that stuff. Watch how quickly this news article turns into a get your vaccine ASAP. This is how you sign up. Okay. Guelph neighborhood declared COVID hotspot. Okay. An area of Guelph has been declared a COVID-19 hotspot, allowing people living there aged 50 and older to register for vaccination. Provincial officials announced the hotspot on Tuesday in 13 health units, including the section of Guelph within the postal code prefix of N1K. For the most part, it covers the area between Paisley Road and Wellington Road to 124 and Elmira Road to the Hamlin Expressway. COVID-19 has disproportionately impacted certain neighborhoods and communities, states Ontario's COVID-19 vaccination plan document. Delivering vaccines to people who live in these communities is critical to reducing the impact of COVID-19 as quickly as possible. The 2016 census shows that area that had a population of 9,266 people, of which more than 3,500 are age 50 and older, with 2,880 dwellings. I think it's interesting that they went through the census data, right? I think because the census, it's not like, I don't know that somebody went through the census data to figure this out to start the neighborhood. But they went through the census data to figure out how many people over age 50, right? And so they're pushing this to register vaccinations, right? Using the scare tactics in a neighborhood, right? If you're 50 plus in the Wellington, Dufferin, Guelph Public Health Unit hotspot community, with this postal code, you can book your COVID-19 vaccination. 5 people like this. It's suspect. People aren't like, yay, right? Like, most people, I think, want to be left alone. Here's Global News saying blood clots are more common with just day-to-day living than they are with any of the vaccines, said one expert. Global News running cover for blood clotting. They stopped it in the United States. Johnson & Johnson. Johnson & Johnson stopped the vaccine in the United States because of the blood clot issue. And so now that's AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson that have had at least some countries stop their administration. But we've got articles like this popping up. How to talk to vaccine hesitant friends. Experts offer tips on addressing concerns, right? Anger and frustration can take over when people are hearing rumblings of COVID-19 vaccine hesitancy coming from their friends and relatives. This is a prep article. This is telling you how to try to convince your friends and family to have the COVID-19 vaccine. This is another angle to their awareness and uptake campaign. This is what this is, okay? They're using your friends and family to get compliance. Here's the link for the Johnson & Johnson being paused in the U.S. for rare blood clots. Rare enough that we want to make sure that it doesn't happen to lots and lots of other people, right? The chief medical officer for Alberta is reporting 0 cases of the flu in 2020-2021 season. Not one. In Alberta, there were 8,470 cases and 41 deaths from it in 2019 and 2020. 2021, 0. None. How did we manage to entirely eliminate the flu? Isn't that interesting? Isn't that an interesting thing to have happen? Here is an Instagram that got sent to me by somebody. I think this person's in Guelph. This is Guelph General Hospital. There's videos of how empty the hospital is. And she's walking through the hospital. She's had a surgery. It's a very interesting, she's got a YouTube channel too. So very interesting information on this channel. There's a letter from a doctor here asking about the side effects of the vaccines. And she actually reads the letter out in a video here. So I'm not...
Hi, guys.
There you go. I'm not going to read it all out for you. You can go read it out. You can have her read it out for you if you like. But he's asking, the letter is asking, Do you have any suggestions as to how I should treat the vaccine-induced neuromuscular weakness, the dizziness, the sensory loss, and the chronic pain symptoms in these people, or should they all be simply referred to a neurologist? I anticipate many more will follow as the vaccine is rolled out. This was only phase 1 and the first dose. In stark contrast to the deleterious effects of this vaccine in our community, we've not had to give any medical care whatsoever to anyone with COVID-19. So in our limited experience, this vaccine is quite clearly more dangerous than COVID-19. So this is from a doctor, right? Dr. Charles Hoff in Lytton, BC, from April 2nd. There are people who have serious questions. Here's another questioning the vaccine. Do doctors have to have the COVID-19 vaccine? And here's a doctor's response. I'm not going to read this one. I'm just leaving it for reference. I think it's interesting to read through stuff like that, but I don't know that it's worth me reading it out right now. Here's Mark Friesen, and he says, I believe the Alberta RCMP and the Alberta Health Services have contravened Section 176 of the Criminal Code by preventing the Grace Life Church to proceed with their religious services. The RCMP at Spruce Grove Street, Alberta K Division, and Ottawa, along with Edmonton Police, refused to receive my complaint, leaving me no choice but to prosecute privately. I'm initiating that process now. I wish you luck. I hope that there's something that happens with that. But I think that it is an interesting situation when we don't get representation and we don't get protection from the police, when the laws aren't enforced equally, and when there's no choice but for a person to seek out to privately prosecute. When you're outside, I mean, look at what happened with Norman, or what was the thing that got delivered on Canada Day in 2020, or was it even 2019? No, I think it was 2020 because that was going through the Trump election and blah, blah, blah. But when the courts are coming out and saying that, we really should have kill switches for websites, like, or when former Supreme Court justices are saying we really should have that kill switches to websites and internet censorship for, to preserve our democracy, you have to wonder if the courts are on your side. You have to wonder if it is, you have to wonder. Is it all just to prove that they're not on your side, right? Like, is the resolution going to be satisfactory? I don't know. And I do things as well to test the limits, to see what's going to happen, not to test the limits on purpose, but like, why are some religious services allowed to operate and some aren't? I know the answer, but how corrupt are our courts and how corrupt are our institutions that allow this to continue, right? The police are obviously willing to allow Grace Life. They're willing to be there with their gas masks and all of that other stuff. That was plain. They're willing to intimidate people. They're willing to take footage of people. So boiled frogs, right? It goes back to that, I think. And so it's difficult to fight a situation where the whole deck is stacked against you and they can deal themselves any hand they want, and give you any hand they want to give you. So it's a difficult fight, man. It's a difficult fight. I wish you the best of luck. I really do. And I'm not trying to discourage you. I'm just trying to say, how do you win against those odds? That's hard. It's hard. I hope I'm wrong. Critical race theory is another plank in the attack against the West. I don't think there's any other way to look at it, right? Like, saying that just being white is racist is inherently racist. It just is. Go look at my critical race theory 7-part series on Canada Report if you're interested about the Upper Grand District School Board. But here is an interesting article written by a teacher. Maybe it's the internet, right? People can say whatever they want, I guess. But he says, I refuse to stand by while my students are indoctrinated. Children are afraid to challenge the repressive ideology that rules our school. That's why I am, says the teacher. I'm a teacher at Grace Church High School in Manhattan. 10 years ago, I changed careers when I discovered how rewarding it is to help young people explore the truth and beauty of mathematics. I love my work. Anti-racist training sounds righteous, but it is the opposite of truth in advertising. It requires teachers like myself to treat students differently on the basis of race. Furthermore, in order to maintain a united front for our students, teachers at Grace are directed to confine our doubts about this pedagogical framework to conversations with an in-house Office of Community Engagement, for whom every significant objection leads to a foregone conclusion. Any doubting students are likewise challenged to reframe their views to to conform to this orthodoxy. My school, like so many others, induces students via shame and sophistry to identify primarily with their race before their individual identities are fully formed. Students are pressured to conform to their opinions to those broadly associated with their race and gender, and to minimize or dismiss individual experiences that don't match those assumptions. The morality comprised of status of oppressors is assigned to one group of students based on their immutable characteristics. In the meantime, dependency, resentment, and moral superiority are cultivated in students considered oppressed. Recently, I raised questions about this ideology at a mandatory whites-only student and faculty Zoom meeting. Such racially segregated sessions are now commonplace in my school. It was a bait-and-switch self-care seminar that labeled objectivity, individualism, fear of open conflict, and even a right to conform as characteristic of white supremacy. I doubt that these human attributes, many of them virtues reframed as vices, should be racialized in this way. In the Zoom chat, I also questioned whether one must define oneself in terms of racial identity at all. My goal was to model for students that they should feel safe to question ideological assertions if they felt moved to do so. It seemed like my questions broke the ice. Students and even a few teachers offered a broad range of questions and observations. Many students said it was more productive and substantive discussion than they expected. However, when my questions were shared outside the forum, violating the school norm of confidentiality, I was informed by the head of the high school that my philosophical challenges had caused harm to students, given that these topics were life and death matters about people's flesh and blood and bone. I was reprimanded for acting like an independent agent of the set of principles or ideas or beliefs, and I was told that by doing so I failed to serve the greater good and the higher truth. He further informed me that I had created a dissonance for vulnerable and unformed thinkers, not uniform thinkers. Sorry, I thought it said uniform. Unformed thinkers, and neurological disturbance in students, beings, and systems. The school director of studies added that my remarks could even constitute harassment, threat. Okay. A few days later, the head of the school ordered all high school advisors to read a public reprimand of my conduct out loud to every student in the school. It was a surreal experience walking the halls alone and hearing the words emitting from each classroom. Events from last week compel us to underscore some aspects of our mission and share some thoughts about our community, the statement began. And independent schools, with their history of predominantly white populations, racism colludes with other forms of bias, sexism, classism, ableism, and so much more to undermine our stated ideals, and we must work hard to undo this history. Critical race theory is hot garbage, and it is being shoveled enthusiastically and shoved down your kids' throats if your kids are in public school. That is what's happening. That's currently what is happening. And I'm glad there are people who are speaking out against it. I'm glad there are people who are speaking up and saying, understand what's happening, because it's happening. It's happening. Your kids are being told that by virtue of their race, something is true about them. And that's just wrong. It's wrong on so many levels. It's wrong. Here is the last story for today. This is how a narrative is manufactured. I've talked about this before. The language used in the press is chosen carefully, and when coordination happens, then they think that it's powerful. CNN yesterday released, or Project Veritas released a clip of CNN basically claiming credit for getting Biden elected and Trump kept out of office for a second term. And they said, we manufactured stories about Trump's health and Trump's ability to be in office and his ability to serve in office, like his capacity ability, is because of his health. They manufactured stories about his hands shaking and all sorts of stuff, according to this video. And so now they're going to double down on climate emergency. Now that's what the goal is. They're going to, instead of doubling down on Trump misinformation, they're going to double down and call everything a climate emergency. And so here is Scientific America bending the knee. Okay, Scientific America has agreed with major news outlets worldwide to start using the term climate emergency in its coverage of climate change. Read our statement about this decision and the impact we hope it can have throughout the media landscape. They are using climate change. They know that the pandemic is not going to continue to allow people to be locked at home. People are getting sick and tired of it in Canada. But boiled frogs, I'm worried about being a boiled frog. We're already more than halfway there. The water is hot, and if you're not jumping, right? So they're going to use the climate emergency to double down on the fear that they've planted. I'm sure they're going to try and tie the climate emergency to somehow to getting sick. Like, oh, the climate needs to be mitigated because COVID-19 spreads worse, blah, 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 blah. I don't want to give them ideas, but it'll be something like that. Something to turn that omelet, right? Like to flip that omelet seamlessly so that, you're clapping at the sky for the heroes again, instead of calling out the politicians as cowards and wastes of space that they are. All right, that's enough out of me. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com, check out CanadaReport.co, check out SpeakingMoistly.co. And this week is March break, and I couldn't record Speaking Moistly yesterday with Greg because I was out at the skate park with my kids, and then today I can't either because I've got another thing at 2:30 that I can't do, and I forgot about. So I'm going to try and get a Speaking Moistly done this week, but we'll see. But anyway, check that out anyway. And the other thing, somebody was telling me, like, dude, your garage is great and all, but maybe you should have something that looks half decent, right? Half decent, eh? So I have the ability to put a background in. I'm going to put a background in. If we weren't in a complete lockdown, I would go to Home Depot right now. I would get up and go. And get lights, because I actually have a green screen. There's a green screen over there. I'm not going to show you, but there's a green screen just out of the shot on this side. So I have a green screen. I have the stand for the green screen. It's right here. I tested it last night. I've got most things done. I don't have the lighting, and I don't have even any lighting that even remotely comes close to lighting the green screen the way it needs to be lit so that I could do this. But in the next day or so, whenever the lights get here and if they work properly, then I'm going to have a green screen background, and it's going to look like Tucker Carlson in here. Or maybe not. I don't know. I'm going to put a background, and it's going to be, I was thinking maybe a fireplace would be kind of cool, but it's kind of busy. I don't know. We'll see. I'm going to play with it. Put your suggestions in the comments. I'm interested. What do you think my background should be? A beach? Right? On the beach, on the beach, on the beach. No, okay. Anyway, doesn't matter. A Canadian thing? Like, I could be Banff, but it's not Banff. Toronto? It could be like a little video that loops. I could be on a Toronto, like Queen Street or something. That'd be busy, wouldn't it? Now I'm just talking. Okay, thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful